All right, should be all good to go. Let's just go ahead and make sure I can hear myself. The microphone's working. Go ahead and possibly mute this whenever it does allow me to hear myself. Yeah. Oh, I have that would help. Hell yeah. Okay, cool. I can't hear myself. All right, how we doing? Now this right here is a fun slate. Okay, so what I want to do is just go ahead and jump right into it. We'll talk about practice and where everybody's starting and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go ahead and bring this bad boy in here. And you might be like, "Ooh, what's in the blackout?" Well, we'll just have to see. So, going over the bare minimum, by default where people are in practice and stuff. Absolute green track, huge fall off in practice, huge differences in practice stuff or in the two practice sessions here, which, whatever, that's fine. We understand that's what happens. This is nothing new, okay? But use this combined with where people should be, then you can decipher where people are and where people should be based on other intermediate tracks. And then we have a good idea of where people should be at in terms of speed. This is where fellows were at the end of practice in terms by averages, looking at laps that were over the bare minimum of like 149 miles an hour. You can see the guys who are slow. Now, I'm going to be real here. I think and I didn't check abnormally distributed stuff because when I checked, he hadn't had anything there. I think NASCAR, I think their data was fucked on Chastain because I only pulled 3 laps of his. And I know for a fact he did a longer run because, when I went on like Twitter and I was like, "Ooh, what happened to Chastain? Did something happen here with my little crab arms?" I didn't find anything like out of the ordinary, like no reports on him not running laps or anything. There were, DGMs tweeting out like, "Oh man, Chastain feels pretty comfortable after this run, making a small adjustment, then heading back out there." Then I'm like, I'm missing laps here on Chastain. So that was like one takeaway. Uh, I didn't bother looking into it more than that. That was just, oh, odd. I guess I'm missing lap. Whatever. That's fine. But past that, we got everything else for everybody else. Like we know where people are, like the slow guys. Like none of this should be incredibly shocking. Oh, why is Sam Mayer here? Well, he ran, so long and stuff. So nothing too crazy here. Nothing too wicked, wild and stuff. And yet again, another reason why I almost dislike doing the preview videos more is this the great example. Because like this race here, for everybody queued, like anything said, "Oh, this is what I think of people. This is what I think of people on Thursday." That doesn't even apply now with where people are starting and the situations that we're running into. Also, what's going on internet? Good morning, Stan, or afternoon, wherever you're at. Maybe you're in Hawaii and it's like 8 o'clock in Hawaii. So good morning to you. When we look at the runs, this is where I do get a little bit more interested in. Where do I sort by? I never remember. Let me just see if this one real fast. I am not, or maybe just Ross didn't run laps. Who knows? Who cares? So the only takeaway at this point is like, okay, who's actually running long, and not where they're at in terms of speed. Like, who are the teams? Is it like the middle fellas last night? Uh, like was it the middle fellas? Is like 7K guys? Is it like the big dogs that should be running long runs? Like et cetera, et cetera. And so like when we're just looking real fast. Love Alfredo Custer and Ryan Sieg sadly did not run 20 lap runs. We see Alfredo and Custer at least running 15. That's fine to see. Jesse Lev clearly not happy with the car. Went down pit lane, main adjustment went back out, but then you'd lose, the short run that you can gain from the 15-minute, 20-minute session that we have. Because that's basically, a 15, 20 lap run. If you go down pit lane to make an adjustment, that's just the run away, so you won't be in the data point. But, at least seeing them run 10 laps, both love, and Sieg is good. Pretty, at least for me, in terms of like where we're at in terms of issues and stuff. Um, Not really seeing anything too worrisome. I mean, Elliott had the tire go down, so like that explains that. We don't really see anything out of the ordinary here. When we look at the people who are running long, people who are going to contend to get through the field, Gregson just had a horrible, horrible Q lap. That's why he's in the back. All these guys who plan on running well, who have a good car, who ran long, like none of this is no. There's nobody up here who shouldn't necessarily be here. I'm not really looking at times. I'm just looking at where the amount of people they're at, where we're at. Like, okay, well, Josh Williams ran 14, or he ran 20 laps. I mean, that's at least good to see compared to where he's starting, compared to people he's running with. Joe Graff Jr., Joe Gibbs ran long, whatever. And so honestly, like the practice data, I'm not taking much away from that, because this then turns into a very much projection based race. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this race is 147 laps. At least that is what we have on the good old NASCAR.com, which has lied to us several times this year, and that's all I'm going to go off of. So we're looking at a race that advertised distance on NASCAR.com, 147 laps. We see situations to where Christopher Bell, who, and this is where we can look at things specifically on each driver. Okay, ran long, clearly happy with the car, not too worried about it, knows what he's getting from there, or knows what he has to do, get acclimated to the car, etc. Like, that's not bad. He ran a long run, puts it on the pole. So we see then, compared to Creed and Sam Mayer, we're then looking at these individuals here. Like, what is the avenue? How do we understand the potential for Bell to run away with this race? Okay. He's clearly faster than Creed. Okay. Across the board. I mean, this is what Creed does. Sometimes he starts second, sometimes he starts third. He's not going to compete with Bell off the start. Like, that's just how it is. Now, maybe you're looking at practice and you're like, well, Creed was better than Bell. Maybe you look on the long runs and you see that, Creed was, 10th fastest here, whereas, Bell ran, long. And like, I mean, we're running pretty much identical speeds at this range, but I mean, as I said, we're not really ranking the practice laps that much, where I'm just going through to answer this stuff. And so people aren't like, you didn't look at this or whatever. Very unrealistic expectation that Creed is going to beat Bell in any form or fashion here off the jump. Long run possibly, but I don't see it at the start of the race. Because of that, whoever's behind Creed's just SOL, man. Whether that be, Bell takes the outside or the inside. If you're stuck behind Creed, who is not going to be side by side with Bell, most likely it's going to be Bell by himself down the back straightaway with Creed back in the field up, or whatever, because he's at a disadvantage because he's going to be, behind the leader on the start. Not behind the leader, but like behind reaction time. So that hurts whoever's behind him, or whatever lane. Like, if Bell clears himself and Creed can clear himself up, whatever lane he jumps into then takes a hit. And so we don't see a situation to where Creed, Mayer, AJ, or even Chandler Smith, I'm being more aggressive with the Creed, Mayer, and AJ look here. We don't really see an avenue for these three individuals to get the lap or get to the lead right off the bat. Okay. I don't realistically see that happening. Okay. And then, so what happens if Bell is that much faster than the field? If Bell is that, not even faster is even the right word. I really don't want to use the term dominator, but real chance Bell can dominate this race. We're not playing these three individual drivers. Okay, now that is the start of the race, right? We haven't talked about anybody else. So then you tack on the who is Creed, Mayer, AJ, Chandler Smith fighting against from a DFS perspective. Okay, people in similar price range. Now, you might argue that these guys are in the 8K range. Some of the place differential in the race is in the 10K. We have, Gregson and Logano and stuff at a discounted rate, even Jesse Love at 78. And so you then look at Creed probably not getting the lead off the start. Mayer's not, AJ's not, Chandler Smith is not. So we see that. And then we also see them most likely being outscored by people who are starting in the teens, who offer place differential and stuff. So it makes Creed, Sam Mayer, AJ pretty much unplayable. Um, I would argue Chandler Smith as well. We then get to Austin Hill, and we see where Austin Hill has been. We see his price tag. We see now yet again. We can't lean everything on practice speed, and this is very dependent on the session he was in, because if it wasn't, we most likely would have seen him qualify better if he had a real short run car. Because we're clearly seeing that he was the fastest in practice. People were like, well, why didn't he get the pole? He clearly has the fastest car. This is session dependent, whatever. But ran a long run, knows he's competing, knows he's going to compete for the win. He's not going to have the fastest car, 25 lap run. That's that's just what the session was. But we see where Austin Hill is at, and we see him at 96, and we can see that when you look at Hill. Actually, we'll go through all these guys really fast. You look at Creed, we look at Mayer. No, and I got to pay attention to what time the slate starts because I got to add some more lines. We're an hour and 7 minutes away. We look at Mayer. We look at Allmendinger. Like, we're just not getting there. We look at Chandler Smith and the fall off he has had. If I can spell Chandler correctly, we've seen the fall off that Smith has had. And so when we're looking at people who are starting up front who can lead this race, who would fight for the laps led, who would potentially be in a spot to take the lead on pit lane if we have, wild cautions pop up at certain situations, it's pretty much Bell and Hill at the moment. Okay. Hill can directly compete against the guys who offer place differential in the back of the field because he has the car and he has place differential that he's going to get. He has the most likely outcome to grab the lead on Bell on an early yellow, even just the stage 1 yellow, because everybody else who is going to compete has to get through the field. They're going to have lap cars in between them. It's most likely that Hill is the guy who would give Bell the best run for his money in pit lane, which even then that is quite scarce. Okay. And so now continue to go through and we've identified 2 people in the pool so far, right? And this is just how I approach everything, but this is a pretty good slate to do that. That's why I have this blacked out, because guess what? I'm going to be showing projections and stuff on the stream to better help share how I analyze these slates. But we've identified these 2 guys here. We're most likely not playing Jones. Herbst at 81, depending on what the projection is on what site you're using. As I've said, we look at Herbst. We're not playing Jones here. What is Jones giving us? Whereas Herbst, at least, now you might argue that these guys have had very similar performances in, what ranking their speed was at in these races. I would say that we've seen SHR in this series have much more consistent cars between the teammates this year, and typically Herbst is usually right behind Cole Custer. We've seen Riley Herbst compete for getting quite a few laps led and fast laps in these races, and him at 81 is a price tag that I'm fine with. But we're not playing, we're not playing Retzloff. Parker 73, Sammy, Corey Heim. By default, none of these guys are probably going to project at value based on where they're starting, because they're expected to lose at least 2 to 3 positions each when you start looking at everybody behind. Okay, and so when we start looking at this slate, now that we've identified this type of stuff, yet again, bottom of the salary, don't got to worry about it at the moment. This is how we're determining, what type of race this is. Is this do you want 2 dominators? Do you want 3 laps, 3 lap leaders? So we've looked through this. We see that we have pretty much, a car that is heads and tails above the other guys he's starting around at a price tag that isn't that expensive, really. I mean, this is a pretty soft slate pricing wise. So we see a situation here to where the optimal lineup will then probably be dictated, and the players will probably then be dictated by what salary, or not what salary, by what projection everybody has. I think this will be a very projection-based slate. Now, you might say, every slate's projection-based slate. And yes, but I mean, we can visibly see where the builds can go here and what outs there are in comparison to other slates that maybe that's sometimes more ambiguous and maybe isn't as easy to see. So when we start looking at the projections that I have for people, yet again, projection after a certain point really doesn't matter. If Bell scores 66 or 112 points, doesn't really matter. Okay. But as we start going through and you look at value of where these people are at, it makes it very difficult for these guys to pay off their price tag or be viable unless they get the lead. And in order to do that, we have to either see, you know, variants take over with people having mechanical issues. We use Bell for an example. Like if Bell fails early, well, then clearly these projections won't be accurate for these guys because this is anticipating Bell is the, you know, clear lap leader for a majority of this race based on his starting position, based on where everybody else is at, so on and so forth and stuff. But as you start going through and you look at these projections, which yet again you can get a TrueDFS. Now I'm showing it here because we're entering NFL season. Maybe some people want to see what I'm working with or what I do or why I analyze things the way I do. You can you know, use the codes at the bottom of the screen that I just went blank on. But you can use that for your first month if you don't already have a month with it. And the NFL yearly code works on both new and existing customers. So if you are interested in the yearly package and you already have a subscription with us, you can use that NFL yearly for 10% off a yearly subscription. So as we're going through and we're looking at these projections here, as I've stated, yeah, sure, 73, easy to get to, but in terms of raw numbers that these guys are at, we start running into a lot of issues here of where people are going to be scoring, especially if we're having to chase Bell. Now, this discussion here, which we will talk about the other side of this coin if Bell fails, but we're approaching this discussion right now as if Bell is, you need to play him, he's optimal, real chance he's the main lap leader and stuff. So what happens in that situation here? So you're at $11,000 for one of the guys in your lineup, okay? After that point, we are looking at let me move this here, sorry. We're looking at where, and let me see where they're at. So we're looking at people who are then the next highest scores. So we'll just kind of sort this really fast. It's going to mess up the stuff on the left, but we'll just do this for an example. You look at the top scorers here: Bell, Hill, Custer, Allgaier, Elliott, Gregson, Herbst, Love. Now, why are they projected at these ranges? Hill is leaning a lot more towards starting position up front. Real chance he has a top 3 car in this race, as we've seen in other races. Real chance he can be a lap leader if Bell either loses the lead, on pit lane, on a long run. Like, Hill is the benefactor to that. Okay, but Custer and Allgaier are pretty much identical plays. Okay, their outcomes are equally as, what's the word? I don't want to use ambiguous again because then it makes it sound like I just picked up a dictionary and learned a new word. But Custer and Allgaier's projections do not matter. They're the exact same plays, and either they'll both score very similar, or one will fail and one won't, depending on what happens in the race. But the fact that these guys are both starting deep in the teens, if not in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken, by default, these cars over the course of the seasons, which we have seen, they've been able to get through and finish top 7, top 5, top 3. That's where the projection has to be at. That's where the speed is at for those cars. Okay. Now, yet again, this includes potential laps led and potential fast laps they might get, but the raw points that Custer and Allgaier have in their place differential upside is easily, 12 to, 16 place differential spots by default. Okay. Because of that, they are pretty much going to default to at least they're going to most likely fall in line between the 3rd and 6th to 7th highest scoring drivers on the slates. It's just going to depend on how far away they get from value and if they need to be forced in with Bell. And that can also be accomplished if the bottom just falls out in terms of projections. Like if you have, 83, 57, 57, these guys in the 50s, 40s, and then bam, just like piss poor value. And guys, like a shitload of guys in the 7K range and the 6K range scoring like 20s and like missing value. Well, then it goes to raw points to where you'll need these guys up here. Okay. Chase Elliott, by default, same situation as Custer and Allgaier. I would argue a slightly better car than Custer and Allgaier, or you can say that it's the same, whatever. I would lean the Hendrick car being slightly more or slightly better. But then again, starting a few positions higher up, when you default Cole Custer, Allgaier, and Elliott all, expected to finish like in the top 6, 7 and stuff. Well, by default, Elliott's getting beat by Custer and Allgaier, and so that situation where he's like, he's 10K. Does he score, 48? Like, I think Elliott could work if he's not scoring 5X, but it's going to depend on what the rest of the slate does. As we continue to go down, we have Gregson starting 27th, who had a terrible Q lap, which is why he's starting back there. And we can see that, Gregson is going to be a top 10 contender, top 10 on speed. Now, this is where you will look at, like, okay, does this speed justifying a 29th place starting position or wherever he's at? Clearly, it's not. Okay. Even with the tracks different, we're seeing a pretty significant change in terms of speed between like a Gregson and like a colleague car and other stuff like that. We know Gregson is planning on running long. We know this. It's not an SHR, but it's an SHR car. Like straight, it's like it is an SHR car. Like, come on, like 83 starting here. Like, Gregson makes a lot of sense. We see Jesse Love, who has, struggled a bit, but typically Jesse Love is starting 11th, and he's not $7,800. We see a very soft priced slate here. Okay, and then so if we're looking at where this race is going to go, value is only important. I mean, I like Smithley the most. I mean, Smithley in an Alpha Beta Prime car, way better than the JD Motorsports cars that we were dealing with him and earlier. You have Greg Van Alst, who is like a fumbling baboon out there, but he's starting last at 52. So Greg, Smithley, Ellis, Leland, these are the four values. I mean, these fellows here, these are like the four values that you're using. Truly doesn't matter. It's just going to be whatever God decides to do with these four guys of who works. That's what it comes down to. Greg might work if we have, 6 cars DNF, him starting last, 32nd might be enough, because a lot of people don't realize that when you have so many guys in the back of the field, if there's a bunch of DNFs, who benefits the most? It's the guy starting farthest on back, even if he's the worst driver. Because then if anything else happens in the race, he's already guaranteed passing 7 guys and stuff. So these guys, these values, all the identical play, literally just going to come down to what you need in your lineup salary-wise. And I don't really see a reason why you would leave more than, $400, $500, maybe $600 on the table today. I don't really see a reason why you would do anything else other than that. So, we started looking at this slate in terms of build wise. Yet again, starts in 55 minutes. We anticipate Bell is going to be competing to be optimal today. And then you look at where everybody else is projected at, and you see situations to where I need to bring this up. You see situations where you see situations where waiting for scoring here. So you see situations to where, it starts regardless of what projection source you're using. Jesse Love, Noah Gragson, Cole Custer, Justin Allgaier, Joey Logano are then starting to be prioritized because, yet again, and this is not how it's going to be, but, you can kind of see where the rankings are here. You start seeing them being the drivers who are more likely to start scoring, at least over 40 points. Any idiot can score like 28 points, 29 points, but we're trying to get as many people who are scoring higher in these races as possible. Typically, the optimal lineup is grabbing, 6 drivers, usually 5 outside of like the value is just going to be whatever forces its way in there. But typically the optimal is going to have, 5 of the top 8 DFS scores at the end of a slate. Okay. So then, then it goes to, Jesse Love, Noah Gragson looking like great plays today. Allgaier, Custer, whoever forces their way in through there, Logano, if you need an AK guy, so on and so forth. And so that's like the first part, the first type of build. Okay. Second build is then truly raw points, which then we still see Jesse Love and Noah Gragson be there. But then like raw points start to come through with like Riley Herbst, Matt Benedetto, Austin Hill, people like that, and so that's a situation to where the place differential at the 10K range starts, struggling to hit value. They're at like a 4.7, 4.8. Cole Custer might make it to, and he finishes 9th. Allgaier finishes 8th. These guys are too expensive. They don't pay off their price tag. You then start paying for the raw points and the cheaper guys Austin Hill, Herbst. I mean, even possibly like Chandler Smith or like Sammy Smith, people like that. Like that's the avenue of like where that goes. The third avenue that I see potentially working today is an all place differential value. And all it takes is Bell hitting the wall, blowing a tire, blowing a motor, speed on pit lane. If Bell fails, especially if it's past halfway, I have no clue how these guys work. Maybe he'll, whatever, take over. I have no clue how anybody up here works. If Bell leads like 80 laps, he's up front, blows the tire, hits the wall, whatever, taken out of the race, it then defaults to all place differential. So, like today, as I'm building my lineups, I'm probably playing like, 16, 15 or whatever. Um, Probably going to have 10, 11 or so with Bell. 4 are going to be built without him. 3 will probably just be place differential plays in the 20s because this race is 147 laps, very limited on fast laps and laps led potential. If anything happens to an early lap leader or the guy who leads the first part of the race, those points are thrown away and then place differential becomes the absolute necessity in this field. And so like that's a very a way that can very easily happen. If you just play, Logano, Gregson, Cole Custer, Allgaier, like stuff like that has a very high potential to be optimal today if Bell fails. Okay. Past that, now that we've identified and we see, different situations people work in, I would be personally capping ownership to Jesse Love, Gregson at probably like 45%. Because they're going to show up a lot. And I do believe that at this point, with the ownership that will be pushed forward, this is my own shit, but like, like if we pull, let's go ahead. Well, I've already showed you this, so it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and bring up SaberSim and see what their product is pushing. So On Sheets even has his stuff out too. We're gonna change. We're gonna make a new build. We're gonna look at SaberSim stuff. Okay. We gotta make a little tiny change detail so we can run this so we don't break no TOS and stuff. So if we start running, SaberSim stuff, we'll run it like this. No real matter and stuff. So let's see where, SaberSim stuff pushes to. We can run some sims and just see the ownership, or not the ownership, but the exposure rates. Actually, let's did I already hit that? I want this, actually. I'm on the wrong one. I want this here. Let's pull a 500. Let's just see their top 500 exposure here. So we look at just what SaberSim has in general. We'll look at, I'm going to just look at projected score really fast. So their projected score, Bell Quaffle, which I have not mentioned Quaffle, just real fast. Now you can clearly see I have him at 29 points. Outside of Dover, which he got maybe I fell into it too, because I ran issues of like, hey, I'm playing more Quaffle than I probably should in the past, fine at short tracks and stuff. But these races, like this Dover race, yellow's late, potentially, fought for the lead, gets beat by Truex, and so on and so forth. Like even Truex won that race because that race got funky at the end. Quaffle wasn't that good of a car, man. We look at other races. We look at Darlington I didn't even spell Darlington correctly there. Look at him in the spring, 19th best car. We look at how he was at Nashville, 18th best car, 17th best car. I forgot how this works. 17th best car. Like he's starting, 27th. Or am I seeing anything from like this and from what he's done here that's going to show me that Carson Quaffle is like a top 12 car? I have exposure to him. I have him in lineups, but like I should probably be projecting Carson a bit lower and probably project him to finish like 17th, 19th. This is where we're at here. We look back at where Carson finished Darlington this last time around, and we see that I don't know if it was the Crown Royal. Let's take a gander really fast to race and reference, because Carson has been finishing better than where he's been running in these races, but we can still go ahead and look and see where he freaking finished really fast. You gonna move again? Nope, race. Okay, cool. We're behaving. So we look at Carson here. He finishes like 19th, man. That's a race that went green. I mean, not even green. I mean, we did have runs to the end. Not a lot of green flag run. Like that's 19th, started 13th in a junior motorsports car. Like that's my justification for having his projection so low. And I understand why he's projected so high here. Like you understand of like understanding projections and what makes them, what doesn't make them, and having that is how you look at the slates. Like that, I cannot emphasize that more than anything now. Like you might like somebody on a fucking Tuesday, because their sports book line is like janky or like they're undervalued in the salary. But like until we get to the fucking slate, like we don't know who's a good player, who isn't, whatever. Okay, so we look here and we see Noah Gregson having high exposure. We see Love, top 5 exposure in these line in the top. Actually, we'll look at, this is exposure. When we start looking at pool, it'll still be the same. So let's go ahead and just we'll run Saber Sim stuff just to see, and we'll type in the high fancy name of the contest we're in. So I know that's that one. We'll look at the 10. We'll just run what their sims have really fast. We'll see what exposure rates we get here in the pool, and this was the highest projected. This wasn't by their like single game stuff or whatever. This is just what the highest projected lineups have in the exposure in the pool, or the pool of 5,000, and in the exposure rate of the top 500 that I had here. And these are like the builds that we're seeing and stuff. Is this done? All right, so let's sort this by this and see how this changes. We practically see no change at all between what the sims are saying and where guys are at. And so we also see that when we start looking at these projections, you're going to see that, let's look at this here. I got Bell, Hill, Custer, Allgaier, Elliott, Gregson, Herbst, Love. These guys have Bell, Allgaier, Custer, Elliott, Creed, Gregson, Hill, Quaffle, Love. This is, like I said, this is a pretty projectable type of slate, but I've walked you through at least how I get there, how I view that before I look at anything else, before I build lineups. Like this is just looking at how, people project and how they, you know, look to perform in this race. Okay. So now that we've identified this, let me go check the chat, because after this, we'll talk about like lineup construction, what I'm doing here. Let me know if you have enjoyed this at all. Maybe I've been talking to you like you're an idiot and I haven't meant to do that. But this is how I approach these types of slate and how I look at stuff. And then past that, we'll look at like lineup construction and things that I want to do, that I'm personally doing to either get different or get wonky or whatever. Yeah, Keelan. Last night, we got Brixton Bush winning the Bandolero race. We got Keelan running the legend. Junior should have won the Cars Tour race. He didn't. Big L there. Clearly the most inferior of the sons who were racing last night. Paying the Rick today. 3 TVs for, oh, yikes. Oh, man. I can't watch college, dude. I've watched college football 2 nights in a row. I'm already done. I'm already tired of it. It's already over. I don't even care. 23 car. Oh, I guess Bubba got the poll. Who cares? I don't even look at that stuff yet. Internet. Let's see. Hills are second favorite to win. Probably second favorite to win. Let me see what I got here. If I'm looking at to win, I have Bell, Custer, Hill, Allgaier. If that helps you in any form or fashion. So then we look at graph, because I got a graph question here. I'm not playing them. I just don't see the reason to do that. Purely a projection based thing. I cannot give him more than 30 points. I just don't see a reason why he needs 35 to hit value. Most likely to be optimal, we're looking at like 39, 42. I just don't see it from graph. I just don't. I'm just not playing graph. Thank you, Daniels. I'm glad that you like it. Well, I'm glad that you guys like this. I see 96 of you guys here watching this. I do appreciate it. Um, thank you for the 20 likes on the video. So now that we're at this stage, we've talked about the builds. We've talked about, the different ways that can happen. What am I personally doing in this race to get different? So first and foremost, I am heavily approaching the raw points in this race. Now, I'm not going to do this on screen because I don't like showing lineups on screen if I can help it. But I want to see really fast what SaberSim is doing versus what I'm doing here. Because I would imagine, at least on the videos that you're, or the videos, the lineups that you're paying up for people, it's doing like Bell, Allgaier, Gregson, whatever. I like the idea of running 3 10K guys in this race. I think that's a route that can potentially work if they end up scoring, like if and not just Bell, but like Allgaier and Custer together, like really seem like an interesting combination to have them together. And I like Cole over Allgaier today. Um, I am might be a projection based standpoint. I mean, as I said, the projection between these two guys don't really matter. They're identical. Like whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I like the upside that Cole Custer has shown us. Let's peel these two guys, like cutting, splitting the hairs, doing everything here. Cole Custer versus Justin Allgaier. Who has been better? This stuff is showing Cole Custer has been much more consistent. Allgaier has two of the best cars, but he has had more, ups and downs. Two best cars here, two second places here, also up and down. But I guess I just, you know, Xfinity. I would lean to Cole Custer probably being better than Allgaier, and he's 400 cheaper. So I think if the field is going to go, you know, and this is just, as I said, I want to play Allgaier and Custer together. But if the field is going two 10K guys, it's most likely going to be Bell and Allgaier together. I like going Bell and Custer together. Gives me a little bit more salary to work with. Um, I like the idea of trying to get to more Logano today. And yet again, projection I'm at 38.6, but this is more of a construction build. Like who is he fighting against directly? That is a Gregson, that's a Jesse Love. One, I think Gregson needs to fail in those situations. Two, I think that type of build gets you different. Like if you're going to Logano over somebody like Creed, a Herbst, a Sammy Smith, a Corey Heim, like I personally like that type of build. I typically like builds that leave a very uncomfortable amount of like salary paying up for people who shouldn't necessarily pay it off. Like Logano's one today. Clements is like Jeremy Clements is one today that I'm going to have exposure to just because I like that type of uncomfortable like starting position and projection. Like this projection's fucking abysmal, right? Like Clements is horrible. Clements is like actually terrible. Like this is horrible. But if I'm running a chalky build and I'm playing Jeremy Clements, uh, I'm probably not gonna play a ton of Chastain. Um, like I'm really concerned about a performance like this out of this car because it is a DGM car. Um, but like Josh Williams, SVG, Kyle Sieg, I mean that's kind of where I'm trying to get different today. Um, by just playing some ugly ass guys who project pretty shitty, with like pretty like slam dunk type of lineups and stuff. And I love Ryan Ellison Smithley today. Like Leyland, bit more expensive, has probably higher upside, but he fucking knocked the fence down, which isn't not worried about a mechanical issue there. But I just think this is a race where I probably want Smithley and Ellis. They're not going to be as fast. Smithley's going to take care of the car. I don't have to worry about Smithley doing something stupid. Um, but that's where I'm at today. Those are my opinions. That's kind of my breakdown of stuff, and that's how I approach typical slates, and that's how I look at each individual driver and stuff. So let's see if there's any other questions really fast. Um, let's see. How much is too much a bell? I like being aggressive on stuff. People already know that. We're probably going to see Bell be played at least over 45. Maybe I've had a really tough time gut feeling ownership for Xfinity and Trucks this year. I'm usually almost always just under projecting in my head. Um, so I don't know what Bell's ownership is going to come in at. I'm probably gonna have him personally at like 55, 50. But yet again, I'm doing like 15, 16 lineups because I think shit's full. I forgot to reserve a full 20. I think I'm just at 16 or 15. But that's probably where I'm at. And it's not even should you be over or under the field with the type of year we've had with value run into issues. Now, yet again, one thing does not lead to another. If chalk is always running into value, that doesn't mean it's going to continue doing that. But at Darlington, with a car that's going to be this fast, with somebody showing this amount of, pretty much like a for sure type of optimal play, I think the plus EV line or the plus EV play would probably be to have quite a few lineups without Bell. So I would probably cap Bell at like a solid 50% in any exposure that you would have. If you're running 4 lines, run 2 with Bell. If you're running 10 lines, run 5 with Bell. You're running 20 lines, run 5 with Bell. You're running 150, run 75 with Bell. That I would cap him at 50, and then I'd probably cap, Love and Gregson at like 45, 40. They have a higher likelihood of not working out, be involved in a crash, hitting the wall, whatever may happen. You can lower them even more. But that's where I would be at there. So hopefully this helped you out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. I will be live tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time, talking about the Cup Series race at Darlington. Yeah, they race tomorrow. Past that, we have 35 minutes until the lock, or until slate locks. So best of luck, guys. I will see you later, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.